So basically, I was just told a few minutes before I got up here that I was speaking on my own for a while. I'm used to speaking with my dad. So I'm totally admitting to you guys that I'm winging it because I am one of your peers and you guys can totally see through me. And I know that you're not going to believe it if I act like I'm confident. But I'll try anyway. Basically, I am one of your peers. I just graduated. I'm actually younger than most of you. I'm 19. Yeah, nice face there with open mouth. And I did write a book, but, and I have been told that I'm intimidating, but I just got my driver's license a few months ago. So I just do things in a different order. Thank you. I'm still a really bad driver. What I want to talk to you guys about for just a couple of minutes is what I've been thinking about how the environment and social justice interact. My dad did go to school for science and for medicine, and he knows the science of climate change, and I don't really get all of that. I was an English major. We read books and talk about them. But I do know that the world that we live in is fallen, and that we as Americans are using too much, and we're consuming too much, and that the rate that we're going at is not sustainable. When I lived in India, I lived there for 4 months, actually not with my brother, just with his fiance. So we got to know each other really well. We lived together. We had a storage room and a bed in there, and that was us. And I just saw a lot of pain there. I was working at a palliative care center, which means that all of our patients were dying. We had about half of the patients were geriatric, about half of them weren't. It's really hard to see little kids die. Val went to the hospital, and there was a girl who was under a year old, and she was coughing up blood, and they just had to hold her, and they really didn't have anything they could do for her. And that's a really hard place to be. And a lot of the houses that we visited either didn't have electricity, or because we were there, it's starting to be the start of the summer there, the power went out pretty much every day. So for us, that meant like, okay, we're sweaty and gross, and it's 110 degrees. For our patients, that meant every place that their skin had contact with a bed or with whatever they were on, there was a bed sore that was growing, which is basically just a really big ball of pus, which sounds gross, and it is, and it smells gross. And I'm not going to be a doctor like my brother is. But for healthy people like us, that would mean a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort. We'd go to the hospital, get some antibiotics, it would be fine. For our patients, it meant we were going to see them about once a week, getting out the scalpels, digging away all the dead skin, all the pus, gauzing it up again, and that was all we could do. And it was going to their bone, and it was going to kill them. A lot of our patients were going to die of some secondary thing rather than their cancer. And for me, I guess I'd always known that there are limited resources and that we live in a different world than most of the people on this planet. But for me, that was a huge illustration of like, these people need resources, and I have them, and we all have them. We consider, we're college students, we think we're poor, but really we're the wealthiest 1% of the world, less than 1%, just because we have a college education. And something in me said, I think if my peers knew that the resources we were using, like say the electricity to, I'm totally with you guys, I YouTube just the same as all of you, I'm not, but just wasting time on the web or playing video games or whatever, if we knew that that energy could go towards someone having a fan on while they're dying with bed sores, when it's between 110 and 120 degrees, I think that there would be a difference in our generation. And so I guess to me that is what environmentalism is. It's about conserving resources. It's about thinking about our neighbors, even if they're half a world away. And yeah, I think that's really what I wanted to say on my own. My dad's going to come up with me, and we're going to try to not bicker in front of 1,000 people.
Well, thanks again, you guys, for coming out. Hope you've enjoyed your stay in LA. Where are you going next? You're home to Kentucky, but where then?
Then up to Grand Rapids. I have an internship.
Oh, great. Matthew, I just wanted to talk with you first because you were here on Wednesday, and you were talking a lot about creation care, but then you ended with a little scenario on the Good Samaritan. And a lot of people, when they think of creation care, they think, well, that's just caring for creation. What is the link between creation care and neighbor love? You've written a couple books, of course. One of them is The Gospel According to the Earth, Why the Good Book is a Green Book. But yeah, help others make that link between caring for the planet. Your first book was Serve God, Save the Planet. What is the link between that and neighbor love?
Well, to me, the teaching of the story with the Good Samaritan is really the central. As a matter of fact, Christ says this is the central teaching here. You get this one, you've got it right. And in that, we see somebody who is helpless, and they're dependent on somebody with resources. Just as we're dependent on Christ, we do not have the power to rescue ourselves, and we have that situation when we look at us with all of our resources, and as we travel and look around the world and we see people without it, that in order to love those people, we not only need to share a gospel, but we need to share our resources, our technology, our time. And I'm very excited about this generation. I think if you kind of backed up and you looked and you'd say, if you went back a few generations, you'd say the question was, how do I survive? And then it was, how do I get ahead? And then it was, what's in it for me? And I think people are asking now, what does it matter? In other words, what will my life matter? And that's a very good question, because I think that our God wants us to matter and be part of loving our neighbor. And for us, and Emma's talking about people needing antibiotics. For some people, it's just clean water. For some people, it's not being a slave. And that people in this stage of learning are making those decisions. How much time am I going to devote for myself and my comfort, and how far out of my comfort zone am I going to go in helping others? That may be cleaning up a river. It may be working on human trafficking, any number of things.
Well, let's talk about comfort for a second, because Emma, you were, I think, in 8th grade when your dad had this crazy idea.
Yeah.
You must have thought he was going crazy in 8th grade, and.
But I still loved him.
Yeah. But tell me this. I mean, for you, and I'll ask you this next, Matthew. But Emma, for you, I mean, I think a lot of the resistance we feel is kind of a primitive internal resistance, like, can I do without these things? I mean, isn't most of my happiness, and we wouldn't want to say it to ourselves because we kind of out ourselves if we said it, but what we feel is, yikes, if we cut back, if we consume less, am I going to be happy? I mean, what was that? What was it like for you in 8th grade to suddenly go from big house to small house, lots of things to fewer things?
Well, when we kind of physically moved, but also moved as a family, Dad quit his job and everything, I was not a Christian yet. I was 12 years old, and I didn't become a Christian until I was 14. So for me, it was a hard time because I was totally convinced of the whole environmental problem. I mean, I'd seen the documentaries, and I'd listened to my dad and listened to his friends, and I was really convinced, the world is dying. I wasn't convinced that I could do anything about it. So for those 2 years, I really struggled with the idea that I'm one person out of 6 billion, and I can't really do anything. And then when I came to Christ, I realized that there's this nice line in the Bible that says, with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. And I guess that was the big change for me. That's when I realized that what my dad is doing is not only a good thing, but it can actually change the world. And that was kind of when I was about 14 that I actually really realized what my parents were doing.
Let me ask you a little about that, because, I mean, Matthew, this is your job now.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you do. And you get to speak to, and I'm so glad you do, but you get to speak to thousands of people every month. You're writing books, you're doing films. Emma, it looks like this is going to be a part of your vocation in some way, whether it's on the side or certainly a part of your lifestyle. But for most people, they're probably going to be able to do little things woven into their life.
Mm-hmm.
A little less consumption here, a little more giving here. In other words, it's going to be hard for them to feel powerful. There's 6 billion people. You guys can feel a little more powerful because it's your job, and again, I'm glad it is. But I mean, what is the motivation? What indeed should drive us? Because I'm not sure a feeling of power is going to drive the person who can give $25 a month. And I mean, Bono and Rick Warren have a lot of power and money, and they can feel powerful doing this. And I'm not saying that's their motivation, but it helps.
Mm-hmm.
How about for these folks? What should drive this?
You have something?
Well, you're right. We are really blessed that we get to speak to a lot of different people. One of my favorite speaking engagements that I ever had was I went with a couple of my friends, and we kind of did a divide and conquer of a VBS. And somehow I ended up with the 4-year-olds. So basically I'm trying to teach 4-year-olds to care about the planet when they're probably the best about appreciating nature of any of us. Because at least at that age I was covered in sap. And I'm sorry, Daddy. But I was having them act out the story of the Good Samaritan, and I didn't just have the mugged guy. I kind of got really into it because the kids were really into it. And so I was like, who wants to be my... Well, I didn't have a mugger. That was the only thing I left out because I thought that might be a little dangerous. But we had the actual donkey and...
Actual donkey?
No, kid on all fours. And I was like, okay, who wants to be my innkeeper? And this boy raises his hand, and he comes up, and he goes, what's an innkeeper? And I was like, oh my goodness, it's been so long since I've been a 4-year-old. And, I tried to explain to him, but that was one of the, out of the mouth of babes teaching moments for me that I realized you have to go back to the basics for everything, and that our family sometimes takes for granted what an innkeeper is, what a lot of these ways of saving energy are.
And I think that we live in a time, and we see movies where people haul out 50 caliber machine guns on each arm and defeat armies on the freeway in LA.
You're not bashing Iron Man 2, are you? Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
I haven't seen it yet, but and that's that we have this idea of the big hero, and yet I think Christ asks us to be the little hero, to be faithful in small things. And if you're going to teach a child how to read, for instance, and I'm sure there's people here that are going to be elementary school teachers, you're never going to teach all the children to read. There'll still always be illiteracy. You'll never get to the end of that line, but that's good work. And I think what we need to be appreciative of is good work, not necessarily thinking we're going to win the battle, but that we're on the right team and we're doing the right work. And sometimes those are small things that add up. And that's Christ saying it's that widow and the couple of cents here that really make the difference in my kingdom, in my economy.
Yeah, there's a sense that we're going with the grain of the universe. And there's somehow a fit here between even the small callings. Well, let's talk about, I mean, you mentioned the basics. Matthew, you said, this idea of even in the small things. Let's start with that. I mean, these folks out here and I myself, we're busy people. These guys are part-time jobs, they're in school. A lot of them are living simply already, right? Pretty simply. Some of you wish you weren't living quite so simply.
You've got a roommate. That's simple.
What are some of the, I mean, let's get practical. For regular folks, what are some of the first steps? What are some of the key steps for entering into this lifestyle of neighbor love through our own consumption or care? What does it look like?
Emma, you're the most recent college person.
Okay, yeah. I can talk more about what you can do in a dorm. You can talk house, because I don't have a house. Some of the things that my roommate and I did, let's see, we turn off our computers whenever we're not using them, take cell phones out of the chargers so you don't have that phantom load. Jenny is, my roommate, is a great sewer, so she made extra curtains. So we had the blinds that the college provided, and then we had our own curtains to regulate temperature. We tried to have plants in our dorm room, but both of our windows faced north, so we kind of killed them. Okay.
Emma, that's not creation care, that's creation murder.
I know.
I just had to point that out.
I feel guilty.
You can't save all plants. So.
You're forgiven, honey.
Thank you. Thank you, Father.
Small f.
Yes. Using recycled paper in our printer and for our notebooks. Drying our clothes without we both had a clothes rack, and we just had to decide who was doing the laundry which weekend, because not quite all of our laundry could fit on one rack. I don't know who designed those racks, but they're always like 3/4 of a load.
Hobbits, those are Hobbit racks.
Yes. Yes. Used books, that's kind of a financial one too, but I got all my books as hand-me-downs, mostly from my brother. What were some other things we were talking about, Dad?
I'm sure you get this question, Matthew, even from older folks than college kids. How do you get people started?
Well, I used to, because we're called to be children of the light, I love the symbolism of light and using efficient bulbs, and I used to say that. I more and more have said that as followers of the Ten Commandments, that we ought to take a day of rest, and not in a legalistic way, but an understanding that is something that only our faith has to offer. No blue ribbon government panel will ever come up with this longest of the Ten Commandments, which is the commandment to keep a holy day once a week. And it's something that my children have mostly done throughout college, and my son does in medical school. So that's stewardship of yourself and your time. If somebody decides to start doing it now, it will really change the course of their life, I believe.
Yeah, talk a little bit about, actually, there's some very specific things your family has done on Sunday and has not done. Yeah. On that, it's Sunday, right, that you observe?
That moves around for us because I don't tie it to a day of the week, because many Sundays I'm preaching. Right. So this week it's Monday that I'll have my day of rest.
Yeah. So what are some of the you
well,
told me and they were
on that day I don't shop. I don't make somebody else work. We always spend some time outdoors. I want to direct people just to one part of the Bible. And I know there's so many things that at this time of year particularly that you're having demands on your time. Go to the last 5 chapters of Job. It's the longest soliloquy by God in the Bible where it's directly God talking to a human being, and it's a nature walk. There's more there than I can figure out even. But I think part of that going to be with our Father in his creation is something that Christ did again and again, and that we see in the book of Job, and that we ought to try to figure out. So that's one of the things that we do.
Taking naps on the Sabbath.
I-
That saves energy, guys.
Yeah.
You're not using any energy when you're asleep.
Taking naps. Good.
Taking naps.
Crucial part of my Sabbath.
And part of all that, and I think again is it's time, when you're in college to start thinking about this, is how much you're going to give to the Lord, not only time but financially. I think a tithe is a great place to begin for an American at any stage of your life. And so, although I don't write checks on that day, it's part of that theology of this is not mine. This belongs to the Lord.
Now tell me, because we're talking a lot about do's and don'ts, which is critical to neighbor love. But tell me, how has this changed actually your local relationships? If you're not shopping as much on the day that you practice the Sabbath, how does that change what you are doing? If you're not, if you're making more things rather than buying them, if you're hanging clothes on a rack, how does this change your life and relationships in a way that you would say, wow, this is not only good for the people to whom these resources are directed, but even in community? There's some change that's taking place in my community as we're doing this together. What would you observe takes place?
Well, I would say that a big change in our lives because we have this large experience not being Christian and then being Christian and trying to live out these principles that we found in the Bible, is that we are much more available to neighbors now, sometimes too much, to be honest. Sometimes it's like, our house is a hotel. I'm coming home and you was told, yet another group of people is there, sorry. So it means that my home, it belongs to many people now, and not just me. That means I have more neighbors. It means I have more responsibility, that sort of thing. But I have to tell you that we had a storm in Kentucky, and a tornado, and all kinds of trees got blown down, and I wasn't home. I got home, and all my neighbors had cleaned all of our yard and everything. We need more of those kind of neighbors, and there's a cost associated. We have to get in each other's lives. It's not as convenient as living behind a wall. We're too independent, I think, in our modern society. We need to be in each other's lives more. That has a downside occasionally.
Yeah. Emma, tell me, as you've tried to kind of communicate this to your friends, to your college colleagues, what obstacles have you hit? How have you tried to persuade those who might be skeptical that, this really isn't doing any good, or this is really a distraction from really more important things having to do with neighbor love and the gospel? What resistance have you hit, and how have you coped with that?
I think I've gotten some raised eyebrows, but I really haven't found people to be hostile, especially to living simply. I think that's kind of an obvious Christian thing to do. My roommate was not a green person when I met her, and the poor girl is the one who organizes our trips to the recycling center now. So I really found that it builds community more than anything else. I guess just thinking about other guys that are graduating soon, I'm thinking a lot about who I want to be when I grow up, because I still have a few more years, but I am a college graduate now. And just realizing that the things I want to be and the things that my peers want to be all happen to be good for the environment. you know, you want to be like Jesus. Well, Jesus was homeless. That's pretty, you know, low impact. Want to be, you know, live more like Mother Teresa. That happens to be pretty good for the environment. I want to be, a lot of the models that I see and that my peers are trying to live up to as well are incidentally green. So.
Well, let me just ask a last question to you, Matthew. What would be your last admonishment, encouragement before you guys leave here to us?
It would be an encouragement that with Christ all things are possible. There are people who want us to think everything is doom and gloom. This story ends well, and I think we're just supposed to go forth as light. And this is a great time to be alive, to share this message of redemption of all things, and to be a part of it.
Well, let me pray, and pray for you two in particular. Father, I just thank you for the Sleeths, for Matthew and Emma and Clark and Nancy, the wife and the mother. And Lord, I just thank you that they have obeyed a call to embody what it means to love you and love neighbor. And we just thank you for the way that decision is mentoring many of us. And so bless them now as they go. May they experience your joy, even amid the fatigues of traveling and speaking. Thank you for their sacrifice. May they experience love. And Lord, may we open deeply ourselves to what call will be in our circumstances, our places, because we want to love you. We want to love our neighbors more. Teach us how. In Jesus' name, amen.
We hope you enjoyed this message. Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Learn more at biola.edu.